thought of gold like a global passport? I mean, it is universal money after all. But, many people think that gold is just a shiny metal you lock away and, it's, has no value, blah, 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 because that's the garbage that we're fed. But what if I told you that it might just make a difference in seeing you through the financial chaos that, frankly, we're already walking through? And what that really means is that when governments panic, gold is the test. And last week, the U.S. gave us a pop quiz. Do you remember that? Now, let me see. Yep, the Swiss gold trading. Can we have that up, please? Right? Do you remember? This was like on Friday. Swiss gold trading takes a spotlight in trade talks with Trump because obviously Switzerland is one of the gold hubs of the world. And in fact, you can kind of see it in this little chart here of the largest gold refiners in the world. Well, guess what? Most of them are Swiss. 5 out of the 9. So Switzerland refines up to 70% of the world's gold, but they don't mine it. They process it. And the U.S. trade deficit spiked and gold got caught in the crossfire. Now, traders, rightly or wrongly, I mean, it did come out, but they assumed that the gold bars were exempt from tariffs. Remember, we had this issue the beginning of this year. But Customs and Border Protection quietly reclassified them. And suddenly, bullion in shipments froze. Then came confusion. Was it a misclassification? Was it a test? A toe in the water to see how the world would react, how you would react. The Swiss National Bank argued that outside gold exports to the U.S. shouldn't be included when analyzing the trade relationship between the two economies because gold is special and not manufactured, but rather processed. But look at this rush to the physical gold that occurred during the COVID crisis and again in the first half of the quarter of this year. What does that tell you? Well, it tells me that physical gold is the true flight to safety asset. And frankly, actions speak louder than words. But what I want to really bring to your attention is what gold was targeted. Because out of nowhere, the U.S. slapped a 39% tariff on Swiss gold bars. Monetary gold. Those big 1 kilo and 1 ounce bricks as a start, as a test. But traders froze and markets panicked. And then just as suddenly, they said, oops, that might have been a mistake. Was it a test? Was it a mistake? Or what really happened? Because if this was indeed a test, what does that tell you? So here's the twist. And this is why I only buy collectible gold. I don't feel the same way about silver, as you guys know. But the collectible gold coins were not part of the tariff mess, nor are they likely to ever be because they are in a different classification. It's really simple. That's why I personally only hold gold collectible coins, other than the couple pieces that you see me use as examples. And that's why Zang Enterprise teaches strategic positioning. So I want you to think about this too, because planting gold and silver and community, getting all of this in place, this is really how you protect yourself. This chart is showing you gold in terms of the Swiss franc. And you can see that it's up almost 34% just in the last year. And if you test it against dollars, no, that's not really what you're seeing. So this is what we really need to do, because when these things happen, I don't ignore them. Oh, well, just like they were testing during the regional bank crisis, and they were testing people's response to bail-ins or not bail-ins. I think this was a test. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just an accident, but you've got all these very smart people that are doing it. And so this is what I think you need to do. I think you need to call us and put in your sound money strategy and do that ASAP. I mean, come on, what are you waiting for? Build those local community networks for food, water, energy, security, your barter ability, your wealth preservation. Communities arguably the most important, and shelter, because these are all the things that we need to lead a reasonable standard of living. But I hope that you can absolutely see that when desperate governments do desperate things, and when they attack gold, they attack the monetary gold, because that's 98% of all the gold that's above ground. It's only 2%, less than 2% in the collectible gold. And you're not going above the fundamental value of an ounce of gold. If you still are counting on Wall Street to give you any level of good price discovery, you really need to think again, and you need to think for yourselves. And I know with what I see going on with the AI and all of that, that they really are trying to get us to be dumber, right? To dumb us down so that they can do all of our thinking for us. But guess what doesn't surveil you? Guess what doesn't magically, without you realizing it, change? That is physical gold and physical silver. If we do not get physical redeemable gold back in our monetary system, you're going to get a whole lot more of this. And yeah, they'll encourage you, AI and knowing how you are and how you think, they will encourage you to tokenize all of your wealth and to spend it. And then where will you be? Better, maybe. I don't know. Up to you. But maybe it's better to build that community around you locally to create surety. I mean, this is what we happen to have, coming from our garden right now. We've got jujubes, which are one of my favorite things. I mean, there's 75% of all the vitamin C an adult needs in a day in this one little jujube that I grew on my property. Eggplants, basil, it smells so good in here. Everything else, I mean, food becomes the single biggest issue for most people as we go through these transitions. And with some people, a lot of people, having to break that food purchase up into 4 easy payments, except you got to eat every day. So I see a big problem. We need to come together in community and create surety in all of those mantra pieces: food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And community is what we are doing here today. And so I'm going to ask you to share. I know this will go long, but we do break it out into the little amount of time that I do talk in the beginning. People need to be aware of what's happening. They can't just walk through this blindly. And when they give us a test like they just did, you need to believe them. That was one thing my mother always said, and I taught my children too. People will show you who they are. Believe them. I believe this was a test that reinforces all of the reasons why personally I prefer the collectible gold. I still have gold, but it's in a different classification that historically has been exempt from confiscation. And now I will take questions, and this is a long one. So, anonymous collector of pre-33 coins. How should one move their large collection of pre-33 gold coins from the U.S. to India for a relocation? Some countries tax the collectible coins based on the face value, while some may want to know the gold content. Is there any precedence on how Indian customs handle this? You know, I can't say that I know how Indian customs handle it. We have certainly had experience with moving the collectible gold from country to country. If you're talking about a large collection, I know, because we've had it done in some countries, that one of the things you have to research is your point of entry, so your customs point of entry. And you're going to want to go to one that is most favorable toward gold. But they have no earthly idea what the value of the collectibles are. No idea at all. So it's most likely, I can't guarantee this, but it's most likely that they just take face value, because how many people are moving them either, right? So it doesn't really benefit the government to go through all of that training. But I'm not really sure how Indian customs particularly handle this. I do know that there are some easy points of entry in France. That I know, and there are people, you know, some of the strategy specialists had more experience with that, frankly, than I do, because I've been on air for so long. So give us a call and tell them what you want to know, and let's see if there isn't somebody there that has a little bit of experience with that. But would it be cheaper to move gold before gold to dollar revaluation if and when that happens? Most definitely. Most definitely. You want to get into position, and if you're relocating to India, I mean, you should have the community all planned out, and you want to look at that. But yeah, it'll be much, much better, and the opportunity after revaluation is not going to be the same as it is right now. And especially with all the eyes on the cryptocurrencies and that, it's going to be much easier, I would think, to do it now. Oh, here you go. Josh pulled this up. Indian custom duties and taxes on gold imports are determined by the value of the gold content, not the face value or purchase price. Well, even that works, because this is not quite an ounce. So even that works to its true value. Thank you very much for that. And C, do I see a possibility in the future where countries may prohibit moving gold, bullion, or collectibles outside their borders? That's actually already happening in a number of places. China would be one, where you better declare whatever gold you're bringing on the way in, because you ain't taking it out of the country. And there have also been some restrictions in the Eurozone and people's ability to move gold from country to country. So yes, there are some restrictions that make that more difficult. Would it be wise to leave the collection in the U.S. if the cost of moving is exorbitant? Yes, and also there's some gold, like any of your barterable portfolio, you're going to need that first, right? So are you executing? So part of the question that I would be asking is, are you executing the strategy, right? Because if you are, you'd want your barterable portion of the portfolio with you. What would also, I think that India does that because Indians are typically wear their wealth, right? So I think that's probably why they went by weight. Let's see, would it be wise to leave the collection? So I think this really does require a conversation, because if you're executing the strategy, then you might not need to take all of it. Your barterable portfolio, well, that you need very close to you. And we do know if you don't hold it, you don't own it. So you can't leave it in a bank safe deposit box, but there are private vaults, and Zang Enterprises actually works with some vaults that can manage that piece for you. Everything's done under camera, etc. But to get more specific information, if you don't have a strategy specialist already, call us and establish one. And then we'll make sure that we can do whatever we can do possible to put you in the absolute best position to execute the strategy. And Deb Warner asks, in recent past, you mentioned that after the first gold revaluation, there would be a drop in gold prices. Do you have any idea what that would look like and for how long? Yes, thanks for a Zanganger. Thank you for that, Deb. Actually, yes, and Riley did a recent video with me on Venezuela and actually showed that example. But when you hear me say that, yes, when they restructure a currency, everything gets reset. However, gold typically stays up on the spot gold contract, typically stays up there on average about 9 months. So what you're really talking about here too is the exit strategy to pay off a mortgage or any other fixed rate debt. That's really what that very first revaluation is about, is getting that debt paid off. And so we don't want to have a negative impact on the market. And so in the exit strategy that we have is also layered, and it's also timed, because the goal on the way out is to capture as much as possible. And so there are different tools that we can use at that time, and we have different avenues in which we can liquidate your portfolio. So stay tuned, because we have them, and we're setting that up in even greater detail now, even though that's still down the road. We definitely have thought through this quite thoroughly, and thought through this with our wholesalers, with our partners I would call them partners, in our exit strategy. So absolutely. But I can also do that. I mean, that's actually easy enough. And actually anybody can. XE.com is typically the currency calculator that I use. And you can put in XAU, so gold, against, take your pick of whatever currency you want to. But if you use something like Venezuela or any of the currencies, there are lots of them that have done that overnight reset, then you can narrow that. But I'll do that for you, Deb. I'll do that for you. But you could go back and watch Riley's too. Okay. Okay, that's it. That's it simple. Won't take very long. Okie doke. And spirit-filled mindset. There is no gold tariff. Correct. They backed it off. That was, it was misinformation, was it? Okay. Collectibles are a waste of time and money. Best bang for your buck is generic bullion. I'm very glad that you've studied this for all that time, spirit-filled mindset. And if that is where your level of comfort is, frankly, you need to do whatever it is that you're comfortable with. I do, however, recommend that you diversify. So if you really are married to bullion, rock and roll, hoochie coo. I mean, we do bullion at Zang Enterprises if that's what you want. But I would suggest that you diversify your portfolio. So, because on that, you're kind of going on hopium, not history, right? What if I'm right? What if I'm wrong? For me, because I do these, it doesn't matter whether or not I'm right or wrong. I'm covered. If you're doing bullion, you better be right, or you better be properly diversified, so that if you're wrong, this makes up for it. Because what'll happen if this is the only way that you can actually own gold? A lot. Especially in what we're moving into. But I appreciate you bringing that up. I really do, because I feel like people need to hear everything. And everybody out there, you have to do what is right for you. All I can do is tell you what I do for me. And the reality is I have been studying on this on some level since I was, I don't know, about 4, 5, 6 years old. And I'm going to be 71 in another month or so. So I consider that I have a very high level of comfort for this stuff and for antiques in general, good stuff. I mean, I was trained on how hard assets and how tangibles work. But you need to do, regardless of what anybody says, including me, regardless of what anybody says, you are the one that will either reap the reward or suffer the consequences of any of the choices that you make. So you need to do what you are comfortable with. I just suggest that you make sure that you're properly diversified. And Wolf asks, Lynette, have several sterling vignettes hold perfume from the late 1700s to the early 1800s that contain the name of the owner. Are they more valuable as a collectible or for their silver? They would most likely be a lot more valuable as a collector than as the silver. But that is a perfect example of a dynastic wealth stool. And dynastic wealth, for those that it matters to, doesn't matter to everybody, but it does happen to matter to me because I want to leave a legacy for my family. And it matters for you too because you have those pieces. So what are those three legs of dynastic wealth? And that's wealth that's lasted in families at least 300 years. Well, it is real estate, rare collectibles, which would be the category that those fit into, and gold. And you are doing, well, you're doing at least one of them because you can do all three with gold. I mean, you can have a gold mine, and actually, this comes from a gold mine, and I don't know if the light is on there so that you can see the flecks of gold and silver that are in there, right? But you can have a gold mine, you can have rare collectible like you're talking about, and or even the rare coins would fit into that category, and then just some raw gold, right? You can maintain and accumulate the other two with this. So that's the dynastic wealth stool, and thank you for that question because yes, they would have more value as a collectible because there's that rarity factor, and they definitely fit in the dynastic wealth stool. And Neo the Wise asks, greetings, Lynette. What happens to the personal cash stash in case of dollar to gold revaluation that might be impending? Well, first we got to go through hyperinflation, but the cash, it loses all of its value. You just need enough cash to get you through that first line of defense, right? Because that's what's going to be most recognized initially. So there's a certain level, and it depends on your circumstances, so I can't really give you a blanket answer. But if you call us and you talk to our strategy specialists and you go through that exercise, you're going to determine, and to your level of comfort, but you're going to determine what that level of cash is. However, what I also want you to understand in this strategy is that it's designed full circle. So in other words, that barterable part of your portfolio, whether it's cash or it's gold backs, which I have some in here. Here it is. Okay, so cash, gold backs, maybe the digital gold, like lint or something like that, right? That goes in that very first area, as does your barterable gold and silver. And the design of that first part is for you to actually use it up. However, if all you ever do is use up your principal, then you have nothing to work with. So the strategy is designed that when you use that up or when that cash loses all of its value, it doesn't matter. You're not going on hopium because the strategy will make you whole for any costs, any fees, any losses, any using of your principal, any of that. So that's a great question. And thank you for that, because that is a wise question. And Douglas Tavis asks, hi, Lynette, if gold gets revalued to just current, no. Okay, if gold gets revalued to just current spot price, would that spot price suddenly jump up, for example, the $42.22 an ounce to about $3,400? No, they fixed the spot price, that they, meaning the U.S. government, fixed the spot price of 42.22, and that's how they hold whatever gold holdings they say that they have on their books. But it doesn't get revalued to the current manipulated spot. That's just used to make you think that that's its value. When they do that revaluation, it is because all confidence in the currency has been lost, and governments and central bankers are making an attempt to regain your confidence. And I have one that would not take me long to do, because I've done it before. Revaluation of, okay. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. But what happens is the stick of gum, if you're going to buy a pack of gum, it goes from $1 to $1,000 for that pack. Now, it's obviously not that gum being worth $1,000. It's that the dollars have been inflated away and they're worth that much less. And so what they do is they need to lop off all of those zeros, those 3 zeros. And they say, this will save you now, because you see, we took this pack of gum from $1,000 down. It's back to $1. Of course, everything else that you have has also been revalued and has no money. There's no value in it even to buy that pack of gum. But they don't do it just to the current spot price, because the current spot price is a tool of manipulation. It is a form of revaluation, though. So, I mean, you're kind of right with that, because we can certainly look at fixed gold at $20.67 an ounce, which is what this coin is based on. It's just a $20 gold coin. But even when they did the revaluation, they held it at $20. They printed 2.5 times the amount of paper that was out there against the 20th of an ounce of gold. And then they revalued it. And frankly, it should have been revalued to the level that they ultimately, that 42.22, that would have been a much more appropriate revaluation in 33. However, what they said was that the public would not tolerate that. Yeah, so they're trying to figure out always, and with the new tools that they have, AI and all of the data that they've collected on the internet, they'll know much better how to manipulate perception. That's the part that actually really scares me, is the ratcheting up of perception management. And actually, Josh, he was telling me, would you please share, seems like a good place to share the story that you told me this morning about the work that you were doing?
Yeah, for sure. So when we work on Lynette's videos, we'll run it through AI and we'll, optimize for performance, what she says based off of a transcript. So we'll upload the transcript and we'll say, give us an optimized script and cut out anything that will take away from the video. And so we had done that, and then a colleague of mine said, oh, this quote from Lynette sounds like it would be a great hook for the video. And so I looked through the transcript and I couldn't find it. And I'm like, what does it say? And so she read it back to me, and we searched the transcript together, and it wasn't there. It didn't exist. And so we challenged AI, and we're like, what you said is not in the transcript. And it's like, oh, you got me. You're right. This isn't actually there. Here's another hook. And then it explained to us. But it was really interesting to me that it was offering information as fact that did not exist in the transcript that we gave it. And like, if it's doing that for YouTube videos, what other information will it quietly mislead us on and guide us down to believe something that is not factual?
Exactly. And there was a whole article that came out recently as well on China using that to form mass opinion. I'm telling you, we live in very precarious times. It is so critically important that you become as independent and self-sufficient as you possibly can, because this isn't going to get better. It's going to get worse. And we need to make sure that we've got at least redeemable sound money in the system. I'm not going to lie. I'm very nervous with what I'm seeing and the level of manipulation, because they've been doing it to us anyway, and now it's going to get worse. So the revaluation, Doug, just to kind of close this up, they don't revalue it to what is visible. They do that. It's kind of like a shock and awe, and it'll happen on a Friday, and you'll go to sleep at night, and let's say you have $1,000 in the bank, and when you wake up in the morning, you'll have one. And I can't tell you what that revaluation is going to be, but I can tell you that globally on average, it's typically 1,000 to 1. I don't know what that's going to be, though. And in Venezuela, the first one was something like 3,500 to 1. So understand its function is to regain public confidence and lop off zeros so that it appears that things cost you less. They don't. They never do. And Ha M asks, in SHTF scenario, numismatic value will disappear. And that's quite possible. It hasn't really happened historically, but that is definitely a possibility. And that's why it is critically important, not just on gold, but on everything, that you actually know what the true fundamental value of an ounce of gold is, of what a currency is. What's that worth? Right? Because if you're counting on Wall Street to give you good price discovery, it's a trading market. Everything has been turned into a financial product. That's all that it is. And so understanding that, like for me, I'm quite clear on the fundamental value of an ounce of gold. And I'm also, here's one guarantee that I will absolutely give you. At some point, all assets, all instruments, move to their fundamental value. And that fundamental value is not what Wall Street wants you to think it is. That fundamental value is based on whoever created that, what was the single most important function that asset performed. For gold, the most important function, this was a labor for labor exchange, right? Because it takes labor to pull this out of the ground, mine it, convert it into coins, etc. And so now I'm working and generating labor, right? And I'm trading my labor for gold's labor. That's fair. That is a fair exchange. But what are you trading your labor for today? Unpayable debt. Now, really, I want you to think about that for a second. So, understanding the true fundamental value of a dollar, I mean, I've shown you that chart from the Federal Reserve Education Department, the FRED, F-R-E-D. What does it say on there? A big fat goose egg. So, dollars, yen, euro, it doesn't matter what fiat government debt-based currency it is, its true value is zero. So anything that you can only convert back into that, its true value is also zero. What gold contains, it is a savings-based, commodity-based currency. And its true fundamental value, and anybody can check this out. I mean, do it for yourself. How is money created in this system? Debt. So, okay, since a lot of countries, including the U.S., stopped publishing how much total debt they're creating, took that away from us in 2006, for goodness sakes. But you can use global debt as a proxy, and you can do it country to country. I do it globally simply because this is a global issue. So you take all the debt that's been created, and that is a proxy for how much fiat money has been created. And then there's a finite amount of gold. I don't care if there are gold fines or whatever, but anything physical, there is a finite amount of it. So to know what the true fundamental value of an ounce of gold is, you just take all the debt, you divide it by all the gold that exists. Using ground gold too. Rock and roll hoochie coo. It's fine to do that. And then that'll give you a number of the true fundamental value of an ounce of gold. So if you're buying the collectible coins, don't go above fundamental value unless you're doing it for legacy. Then that doesn't really matter because that you're going to pass down through generation to generation. Though I don't think that I've paid more than fundamental value. I might have once or twice. But that would be in the legacy gold that I'm never going to sell it, and hopefully my heirs won't ever sell it, and that way they'll always have wealth to pass down through the generations. But on the kind of gold to execute the strategy, you're not even going to come marginally near the fundamental value. So what that means, and the more debt and money printing that the government does, the higher that number goes. And so that's why in Venezuela, when they saw gold shoot up over 3,500% overnight, it was because of all of the money that they created. So it doesn't matter if this should lose all of its numismatic value. It's still way, way, way below the fundamental value. Could that happen? Well, anything can happen. I can't guarantee that. But this is what I consider a very hedged bet. Just don't pay more than fundamental value for it. And no matter what happens, what if I'm right, what if I'm wrong? It doesn't matter. You're going to be fine. But I'm glad because, my crystal ball, it just gets really foggy for me. So I prefer a hedged bet. It just makes life easier. And then I don't have to worry about it. And Stephen Brewster asks, Lynette, do you remember to ask, did I remember to ask Morgan about the half moon pits? No, but she's here. Could you ask her to come in? I think she's here. She was here earlier. So we'll bring her in, Stephen. Thank you. Some people combine them with Xi pits. Look them up sometime, as I'm new to it all too. And this is Morgan. She's good at this stuff because, we do a lot of rejuvenation of our soil. It's critically important. And that's what those pits are about. So I did actually look into that. And it is a technique to restore depleted soil, because if your soil's depleted, you're lucky if you're going to be able to grow much in it. And again, food is the single most important issue. So we'll see if she's here and we can get her in. And Camfet Busana, hey Lynette, what example of collectible coins would you recommend that would hold its value and not be affected if gold was suppressed? Also, could we really go to a gold monetary system still today? So those are two questions. Okay, first of all, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, would determine the quality and rarity of the coin that you would choose. So this is not barterable gold, right? This is barterable gold. This is barterable gold. So this is not, it's rare because it's physical and there's only so many and they're not making any more. And so it fits into that collectible category. But this was used in circulation because this was actually the money. On the other side of it, if you're looking to say pay off your mortgage, right? Well, you want slabbed because history shows us of the leverage that's in these coins. And by the way, just to answer your last question first, if you go on to the PCGS 3000, that is a coin index. So that's all these. These are a physical only market, right? Bullion and even the raw libs, this is pre-33, but it's just a raw coin and this is a piece of bullion. That's going to be guided by two markets. It's going to be definitely guided by the spot market, which we all know is highly manipulated, but it is. And it's also going to be a bit about demand. So like we just saw last week in the threat, the futures contract spiked. The premium spiked for a minute until that was backed off, and now they're unwinding that. Whereas that had absolutely zero impact on this because this is only a physical market that reflects true supply and demand. But there's another piece that you would look at, and I look at this, and I've shared it with you guys in the past as well, and that's the ultra rarities. And those are not coins that I'm recommending for you, but they are coins that only those 1%ers, those people that are in the know, can write the laws or maybe influence the people that write the laws. These coins can go in the many, many millions of dollars for 1 ounce of gold. You're going to notice that those are at way all-time highs. And I'm kind of thinking that somebody in that position is going to have a little bit more information than the general public. So the coins are kind of like a lower to mid-level. As long as you're paying off a mortgage, positioning, making sure that you're properly diversified for any of the fiat money assets that you choose to continue to hold, or you don't have any choice about it, and you have to hold them, like in a 403B or something like that. If you're still working, you have no choice. So you're going to go more toward the lower end, a little bit more toward the middle range would be for opportunity positioning, because there's a certain level of leverage that rarity and that quality brings in. So it's a hedged bet, and it's a bit of taking advantage of that leverage, but that's what history shows. So is this time going to be different? Probably not. I mean, it could be, because that's beyond my control, but probably not. So it's there again, it's not a blanket answer, because you need to call and have this conversation, establish what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then we can see what you need. So call us and we'll do that. So if gold were suppressed in the physical only world, that's where I like those charts, because it really shows you what's happening in terms of supply and demand. And it's not impacted by, it is emotionally a little bit impacted by the manipulation of the spot market for sure, but not completely. And by the way, it still hasn't reached, the index still hasn't reached its high that it created in 2008. So in my opinion, this is the biggest bargain in the asset class. But everybody's got to do what they're comfortable doing. But I've also got to do what I'm comfortable doing. That's the deal. We all get to do it. And guess what? I will defend to the death your right to make your own choices. And that's what the sound money movement is about. And could we really go to a gold monetary system still today? As long as there were enough participants. I mean, it took 3% of the population to create the revolution here in the US, 3% of a vocal population. So yeah, I think we could. Now, I'm not saying 100% backed, but I want it redeemable, because that's the only tool that you and I would have to vote with. You don't really vote with your vote. I'm sorry. They just want you to think that you do, but you vote with your wallet. And frankly, sound money is my vote. So yeah, I do think we can get it. I think we can make that happen, because they've got to get our confidence back. And so we can force it just by not going along with what they're saying, just by food, water, create that surety, that security, food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. There is strength in numbers. That's what I do here every week, and on all the shows I go to, and all the shows the interviews that I do. It, for me, is really about building community. And here's Morgan. Awesome. Come on in. Okie dokie. So Stephen Brewster, I'm going to let you sit down.
Oh, ooh, I'm in the hot seat now.
You're in the hot seat. So for those that don't know, but I'll bet you a lot of you do, Morgan is our farm manager. And you want to just do a quick little background for those that aren't familiar with you yet? Because
Oh.
I depend on her a lot.
What I do here?
Yeah, what you do here.
So I basically am the glue, the outdoor glue.
Yep, absolutely.
So I just run the farm and the bug out and help build the education series in the community here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she does it really well. So here's the question. Do you know about the half moon pits that they're using in Africa to regenerate the soil there for growing from the mines? The mines have basically stripped all the value.
Right.
Right?
No, I have seen this video. And so basically, from what I understand, it's kind of in the swale category. And so basically, they're collecting the water there so that they can grow around it. So
Okay.
it's basically what you do in like agroforestry or anything like that. You actually
Tell
plant.
them.
Oh,
Sorry.
you plant in the crevices, and so you create these swales. If you look at how plants grow naturally, they don't grow in grasslands. They don't grow in these, like what we've done with monoculture is like plow the field and dig the grooves. Well, that's what the grooves are, is we're creating those swales. So in nature, plants grow in the crevices of rocks and up on the different sides of the hill.
They do.
Yeah, so that the water gets captured there longer, and then they're basically making their own water reservoirs.
So is that not about really rejuvenating the soil that's been depleted?
No, it's about that is more about collection of water. One of the things Alan Savory
That's why I called her in, because she knows more about this stuff than I do.
And I'm not an expert, and I don't have any training with Alan Savory at this time. But what I understand is a lot of what we consider deserts are degraded grasslands because we have depleted the soils. And so it's about creating that water again. Once you create that water source, then the plants have the ability to grow and create the soil again. So that's what it's mostly about, is creating those reservoirs of water and recreating it. So even like the Sahara Desert is a new phenomenon for the Earth. It's not actually a desert. It was most likely created from the pollution of the Industrial Revolution in Europe. And that's what caused all of the famine that we saw in the early 90s, was because of the pollution from the early 1800s had created basically that phenomenon. So it was there when the colonists came and said, "Oh, there's a desert," but it hasn't been there that long, actually. That's probably where the Garden of Eden was at one point.
Oh, wow. Well, that's something to think about.
And the Gardens of Peace, like all of those natural wonders were probably there at one point. So it's a man-made created situation.
Right. Well, while I have you here, because I know a lot of people want to know about what's going on in the bug out, because we aren't really showing it and we aren't really talking about it.
Yeah.
But she's been working, Morgan, and not just Morgan. We've got a phenomenal team that she put together and she's managing up there. So you want to kind of update them a little bit?
We're kind of in a rebuilding phase right now. We're kind of having to go back to the drawing board a little bit and find out where we're actually, where our deficiencies are and where we need to build our resiliency plan in. So it's not just me doing it. Like you said, we have a team, and there has to be redundancies, and there also has to be overlaps. So we're rebuilding the team so that we can have that resiliency, and we're going through our inventory and making sure that we have everything that we need in order to move forward. So we're kind of at the beginning stages again.
We are.
So,
But one of the plans that we have, and we've always had this right along, is to put in ponds,
yes.
right, in strategic locations, and especially because it is a high fire danger. So this team has done the most amazing job in fire mitigation since I've had that property. No, this is the best that it's been, and we're still working on it. But Would you use any of those techniques up at the bug out?
Yeah, so that's often what you see in stock ponds out when they have cattle and everything. They'll dig down just like the half moons. They'll dig down, and then the watershed from that area goes into the stock ponds. And so they are bigger than this, obviously, because they want to capture that. On the bug out, there is actually a dam from when it was a mine, and there is actually cottonwoods still there, which means that at one point that dam did collect water from your property. And what we want to do is just stagger it all the way to that, because there is water coming out of the mine. And so if we can stagger that and create those terraced pools, then we'll have actual groundwater up there as well.
So that's in the works. That's not coming right away, but we are working on it. I mean, look, I think the biggest challenge is when people think, oh, well, everything went so easy for you and so perfect, and I can't do that. Well, it's just not true.
It's not been easy.
It has not been easy, and 3 steps forward, 4 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps, but the key is to keep moving.
Right.
That's the key. And come together and help. I couldn't do this without Morgan, because I don't have the skill sets that she has. I don't. I can only do so much. And I always love it when people come on the property and go, wow, you grow all of this? No, I personally don't do it.
Yeah.
But it's here. So for those that are attempting to grow, and this is great for these half moon pits, maybe you can do a little bit more research. Do you know the Zai pits? Are you familiar with ZAI pits?
No. Do we have that?
Josh will pull that up because
Basically, if you can create any sort of water caches on your property, natural or with tanks, that's going to help your own resiliency, right? No matter where you live, depends on where you live too. Like the half moon works really well in these desert areas, but if you live in a cooler climate, that's where hugelkultur comes in. That's an also water cache.
We should do, I think Chris Willis suggested that we do a whole video on this.
Okay.
On a separate channel. We're still trying to figure out how to do this, but okay, the Zai pits go around the half moon, so there's a half moon.
Right. So they're creating zones.
Yeah.
Can they see that? Josh? Oh, okay. So basically, in the half moon and the Zai pits, I'm assuming what it looks like is they're creating natural zones. And with the trees, they're creating basically little tiny environments on the way that nature actually grows. The way that we think things grow is very foreign to actually nature. The more you can emulate your area, you're going to have a much more successful. That's why the food forest is one of my favorite growing ways, is because it mimics nature the most, and when you set it up right, it has the least amount of work.
Yeah. Well, I built a food forest. I'm not sure that I did it exactly the right way, cause I know what I'm doing.
Well, we've been adjusting.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. I mean, the information about food forests has been relatively new. And when you started, there was no information.
No. Actually, for those that don't know, I mean, Morgan actually came on the property and helped. That was back in 2013 when I first started to really develop a food forest here.
Right.
Right?
It was innovative.
Yeah.
It was
I have a tendency to be a little innovative.
And so, yeah, and then I wanted to know more, and then that set me off on a whole journey to learn more. And, yeah, I mean, there's been some mistakes because we also are in a desert. There was no information on it. And when everybody else was ripping out their lawns to put in rocks, you were like, no, we're putting in trees. And so, yeah, it was definitely on the cutting edge at the time. as well. And and in the last 10 years, we have learned so much more.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know, not just us, but the community has learned so much more as well. So yeah, there's a few things that need to be adjusted, but we were learning. And you don't.
And we still will be.
And we still will be.
That's like an ongoing thing.
And if you don't make mistakes along the way, then you're not actually learning.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So boy, are we learning a lot. But having a good team around. So thank you so much, Morgan. I appreciate
definitely.
that. Love these jujubes. Jujube season. So good. Okie doke. And Tommy Two Gloves asks, this is quite involved. Chris is right. Need an entire channel for this subject. It's actually, we are working on it. And I think that we've got another person coming in that could potentially give us the time. Because I agree with you, Tommy Two Gloves. We definitely do need to have a channel for all the rest of the mantra pieces. I am still trying to figure out how to integrate it, because people think these things are separate, and I don't really see them as separate. I see them all as one. And, you know, honestly, why did I become an urban farmer? That's not the direction that I was going in. And yet, because of my research in 2008, I 100% knew that the system died. And I also knew that food becomes the single biggest issue for people as we go through these reset transitions. And so I didn't want anybody to go hungry. I mean, if I could, I'd feed the world. It's just kind of who I am. And so that's when I bought this property. It's just a half an acre in dead central Phoenix, and started pulling out the grass so that I could plant food. And that's what I've done. And if you come to Phoenix and you're working with a strategy specialist, they'll bring you over here, and you'll see how I actually developed the mantra, because that's how I did it. I just went, okay, where do I feel the most vulnerable? Oh, here with security. Okay, I'm going to do that. Oh, here with food. Whatever it was, that's how the mantra developed, was based on what I knew that I needed in my studies as an economist, what we all need to live a reasonable standard of living. So thank you. And Kamfet Busana, hey Lynette, what example of collectible coins would you recommend? Is this the one? I already answered that one. So D, the question is, I take it that eagles are not a collectible. The new eagles are not collectible. Here's an easy way to know. If you can hold it in an IRA, not collectible, then it's classified as monetary gold. Because frankly, all of this stuff is standardized, so there's really no reason why you can't, but it's in a different classification. So I like to use the IRS guidelines. It just makes life easy. And Deja Vu asks, do you have to declare jewelry? Nope. Jewelry is kind of a collectible too. And you know, when I travel, I always travel with some collectible coins, so slabbed coins, not my best coins, my worst coins just in case, and also some bullion and also some jewelry. And so I'm kind of testing it every single time I go out of the country, and I have not had a problem yet. Not one. Not one. Nobody even asked me about it. And I declare whatever it is that I'm legally obligated to declare. And P asks, is it worth trading 10-ounce silver bars too big or gold bullion for gold sovereign coins constitutional silver? Probably take a little loss when repurchasing, but I feel I have too much bullion as a Canadian. Yeah, and Canadians kind of also deal with another issue, because that central bank and that government holds no gold. So, it's really the largest that I go personally on gold or silver are 1 ounce pieces, but I love my fractional coins, right? Because this I can stick in my pocket. It'd be kind of hard. It's harder to stick a 10-ounce bar in your pocket. So it is definitely, in my opinion, it's worth it. Where you hear my hesitancy is because I'm not looking at what your goals are and what you have. And so I never really like to give a blanket answer because everybody's just a little different. I could tell you personally, I don't own any 10-ounce bars. Now, I used to own bars, but that was prior to 2008. I don't own any of that anymore. And Amir Bilal Mohammed asks, even if current financial system holder allow physical gold and silver to skyrocket price-wise, so you think they will let us enjoy with that or do something like gold confiscation and take them away from us? Yes, Amir, I think they will, because in this country alone, there have been 3 historic confiscations. 33 was the last one, and I mean, gosh, I think in here somewhere I have a Confederate bill. Yeah. Okay. That was one of the times that gold was confiscated, plus the War of 1812 and then also 1933. So, and look, they didn't even print on the back of this bill, did they? Oh, no, they did. This one they did, the state one they didn't. So it isn't the current financial system allowing physical gold and silver to skyrocket. It is right now because they're controlling the visible price. But please understand that the only reason why the governments and central banks will allow that to happen is because they need to regain your confidence. They don't want gold in the system because gold creates fiscal responsibility. There's only so much debt that they can grow and only so much inflation that they can make happen. And they don't want those restrictions because this whole thing has been a wealth transfer mechanism. I mean, when they first put this together, the government said that they wanted to be able to tax and spend, but on a gold standard, the citizens know. And on a redeemable gold standard, if they don't like it, they pull the gold out of the system, and that creates more restrictions. Corporations' problem was they wanted to pay the workers less. But if you're used to getting X, you're not going to settle for Y. However, if they can make X spend like Y, guess what? They've accomplished that. And we certainly all know about the K-shaped recovery and the income and wealth inequality. That cannot happen on a gold standard. Completely inflating your wealth away cannot happen on a gold standard. So do they want to? No, they're not going to do it without us demanding it. And the way that you demand it is you buy gold and silver. And you join the Citizens for Sound Money movement. You make a difference. You do what you can to get gold and silver legalized at the state level, and we will be doing more of that shortly. We have that in the development stage because I need to learn how to do it too. So let's learn together, and we have people that know how to do it. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to learn how to steer it. And we can steer it to a sound money. I know we can. I mean, I know we can. I know we can. I mean, I get how crazy it sounds, but crazier things have happened, haven't they? And Michael Palmer asks, hi, Lynette, some claim Russia has more actual gold than the U.S. If the U.S. revalues gold, do you think Russia revalues their gold? What would be the outcome of the economy, in my opinion? Well, actually, I think this is going to be a synchronized gold revaluation. Every single country has a gold revaluation account. And we certainly saw since 2008, and they're not doing it in a synchronized way anymore. No, hardly. But for many years after the great financial crisis, central banks on a global basis were moving together in a synchronized way. I think this too will be synchronized. Because whoever doesn't put gold back in the system and resets it, well, they're going to be on the losing end if even one country actually does it. I know Zimbabwe made an attempt, But frankly, it was pegged. It was not backed. The gold was not redeemable, so didn't mean anything. That's why it has to be redeemable. And Kathy Piscatello says, Lynette, there is a consensus out there that gold will be revalued. I don't understand how the U.S. has that ability versus other countries, or do they? Will they conform as well to the new price? You know, you have to understand that as long as they can retain control, governments and central banks will continue to abuse you. But yes, Kathy, every single government and central bank has a gold revaluation account, and they will use that. But it's not against another country. That's why I think that this will more than likely, and I could be right or wrong, I don't know, but more than likely I could see this as a synchronized event, so that there's really, if you're not in your gold and silver, there's no place really to run. That's why it's so important to get it done now and get it done ASAP. Do I think that we're going into hyperinflation, visible hyperinflation today? No, I think that they just legalized the stable coins. And so they're it'll be the corporations issuing those new stable coins. That'll buy dollars because that's what's backing them. Though also understand this. There is no guarantee on a global basis that all stable coins are going to be tied to the dollar. They can tie it to the Hong Kong dollar. They can tie it to the yuan. They can tie it to the euro. They can tie it to any other currency that they want to. Now, the U.S. dollar tied to the stable coins is the most prevalent because the U.S. dollar is still officially anyway, world reserve currency, and it's just declining in value slower than some other currencies. But do this experiment yourself. I mean, I always find it really interesting. XE.com. And then you put in dollars to any currency, pick it doesn't matter, take your pick, to any currency. Same time frame, put in silver to any currency. Same time frame, put in gold to any currency, and you're going to see that silver and gold 100% of the time outpaces dollars in a shorter term. So like on a 1-year basis, 5-year basis, and the furthest XE goes out is 10 years. You know, but it's all relative, right? This is how they fool you, because they'll say, "Oh, the dollar is so strong." Well, that's relative. That's against another currency, because we've seen enough of those purchasing power charts where the dollar just keeps losing. That's what the inflation is. So even if you aren't looking at that chart, but it costs you more to buy that loaf of bread or that tank of gas or that medical appointment or insurance or whatever it is it that thing being worth that much more, or the dollar being worth that much less? And that's what it really is, until ultimately nobody trusts it. That's when they do the revaluation. That's when they do it. They don't do it before, because they're still in process of getting rid of that debt. And your purchasing power just happens to be going along with it. So, will they conform as well to the new price? Well, yeah. You don't understand how the U.S. has that ability. Well, they've given themselves that ability. And that's why every country has that gold revaluation account. So they can do that pretty easily. And they can do it versus other countries, but I don't think that's how they're going to do it this time. I think it'll be synchronized. And Stephen Brewster asks, Lynette, don't you find silver very heavy and bulky to store? Gold is much easier, although I like both. Yes, and that's really why, for me, silver is about barterability. And I have enough silver for my needs as well as my 2 daughters for 10 years. And the rest of it, by a wide margin, the lion's share of my personal portfolio is right here. Yep, I've got my barterable and I've got my emergency gold. I've got all of that. But the lion's share is right here in the collectible coins. And Marichka 13, why to buy it in a slab in case government will ban having it over if it's collectible? Yes, actually, historically speaking, when they write the rules, we can easily see how governments and those that are in power have the ability to write the rules in their favor. So, like, a great example is what happened in 1933. Treasury Secretary Wooden put that caveat in so that any coin, and this is the interesting part about it, because anybody could have done this. They just didn't understand the law. The public, shocking, did not understand the law. And so what he said is any coin that was minted prior to 1933 is classified as rare and unusual. That's why for me, this is 1903 mintage. This is a collectible. That's why I can use this, because it just pretty much works very similar to just your straight eagle, your straight bullion coin. This is the new coin. This is the pre-33 coin. But this has an extra layer of protection on it. But that's why I only do the pre-33s in gold. That is not true with silver, because I'm not concerned about a confiscation and silver gets used up in industry. But gold does not. It's indestructible. And so that's what they do. The overnight resets again is sound money, because this stuff has no value. Its value is zero. And so they take something that has no intrinsic value, no value, and they revalue it against gold that's used in every single sector of the global economy and is all intrinsic value. And Deja Vu says, my great-grandfather's glasses were made of 24 karat gold. Ta-da! And I hope you still have them. That's awesome. And Fuzzy Dice says, could you provide a visual representation of money being printed? Well, probably. Oh, yeah. Josh pulled out the money gun. There you go. There's the visual representation of money just being printed. But, you know, there's many ways that governments generate and create money. And going in the digital realm, that's a button push. That is a button push. That's not even printing the physical money, of which it costs, what, 9.4 cents to create a $100 bill. Now, you have to work very hard for that $100, but it costs nothing to make it unless when we go into the digital realm. I just did a piece on seigniorage not that long ago. Maybe we can put that link in there for those to watch it. But I hope that's what you wanted, Fuzzy Dice. ERAW25 asks, can't gold and silver be stolen? Bitcoin is theft proof. ERAW25, there is this bridge in Brooklyn. I don't really own it, but so, yep, gold and silver can indeed be stolen, which is why it is important that you have it in a diversified locations. It's all part of the strategy as well. And also, how much are you going to share? I mean, I don't really keep very much at my house because I'm so visible. But there are private vaults. That's where I hold mine, are in private vaults. And there are ways to hold it and be smart. I disagree that Bitcoin is theft proof. I do not know how to write that code. I do not know how to read that code. And what value does it serve? What is the true value of Bitcoin? Maybe you can tell me that, ERAW25. But I really appreciate you being here, because You need to get much more specific than that. I do believe that when there was a bunch of Bitcoin that was stolen, that the government found a way to find out where it went and did something else with it. Yeah. No. Cryptocurrencies, this is programmable money. You're comfortable with it, rock and roll hoochie coo. I am not comfortable with it because I can't understand it. I can understand gold and silver. It's really simple. These are two commodities that they have never been able to figure out how to reproduce in a lab. Can't reproduce it. I don't know how many thousands of cryptocurrencies are there out there. And Bitcoin, I've talked to a lot of people. I can see a use case putting it on a thumb drive and taking it somewhere in the world. I can see that, and that makes a lot of sense, but not all of it, because what I haven't been able to figure out is where it gets its value. So yes, okay, so this is, okie dokie, this is from an AI overview. Yes, Bitcoin can be stolen. While Bitcoin transactions are recorded on a public ledger blockchain, making them relatively secure, the keys needed to access and spend Bitcoin can be stolen. Oh, thank you for making it a little bigger. Can be stolen through various methods. Here's how Bitcoin can be stolen. Hacking. Cyber criminals can hack into cryptocurrency exchanges, wallets, or other platforms where Bitcoin is stored. Phishing attacks. Scammers may trick users into revealing their private keys or other sensitive information through fake emails or websites. Malware. Malware can be installed on a user's device to steal their Bitcoin private keys. Cryptocurrency investment fraud. Criminals may lure victims into fake investment schemes where they are tricked into sending Bitcoin to the scammers who then steal it. Wallet theft. If a physical wallet is lost or stolen, the Bitcoin stored on it may be inaccessible to the owner and potentially stolen if the thief has access to the private keys or the wallet security features can be bypassed. Okay. There you go. Neo the Wise. Would it be the same for cash stash for this initial revaluation of 1 ounce of gold to $15,000 that they are talking about? Well, it'll be much higher than that, but okay. Would cash lose value? Oh, yes, cash loses all value. That's really what hyperinflation is about. The debt is not payable. However, in the system that we're moving into, apparently what they want is a hybrid system where it's partially created from debt, but it's really created from purchases. So now you're married to and into, let's say, the Amazon ecosystem, and Amazon has to buy dollars and dollar-denominated debt, so treasuries, in order to create these stable coins that are one-to-one dollar-backed. Well, they all go by the way of the dollar. It doesn't matter. But the cash stash, revaluation, at that point, quite honestly, the currency has zero value anyway. Nobody wants to use it. Nobody wants to take it. I'm not saying that they won't, because anything that's tied to the government or you have to work with the government on at some level will be forced to. So in that case, as we're executing our strategy, some of it we may convert into whatever that local currency is, whatever the digital, whatever we're using, but it'll be boom, boom. We'll convert it and then use it to buy whatever income producing assets or pay off a mortgage or what have you. But understand, the hyperinflation is when the currency, the public really recognizes that there is no value in this currency. It's losing its purchasing power value rapidly, and all confidence is lost. That's why they bring in the gold. They always bring in the gold to regain that confidence. Even back in 1933 with the bank closures and all of that, and Roosevelt's fireside chat, What did he say? And you can trust this new system because it's backed by sound money. And what was he referring to? The gold that they just confiscated from the public. They always, 100% of the time, they bring gold back in the system when they are attempting to regain the confidence. They won't do it otherwise unless we force the issue. And we can do that just by converting it to gold and silver. We can force that issue. If enough of us do that, we can force that issue. I know we can. So, Gia Key asks, what would you do if you have cryptomaniac friends blinded by the lies and try to explain the collectible coins? What would be your first point step? Do you think it's worth the hassle? Thank you. You know, diversification is the key. This is really how they get you involved. You've heard of the Roaring 20s? All that new money that they printed, what happened? It went into the economy. People felt richer. They saw the stock market going up and up and up and up. And then as the public was getting in, as those in the know, the industrialists were getting out. So it's really challenging because they are blinded by it. They're blinded by numbers. You know what I would start with? I would probably start with the purchasing power chart from the Fed, because quite honestly, what are you converting those cryptocurrencies into? You're converting them into whatever the currency is. And I would point out that they have zero value, and the stable coins, zero value. But it's going to be hard, and we have to double check. We missed our production meeting yesterday because we got tied up, but we're coming out with this tool for you guys to use. And I think that it's possible that we will have it. I'm gonna not make it real challenging for us. I'm pretty sure we can have that ready for you within the next 4 weeks, if not much sooner than that, because we've already been working on it. So take a couple of breaths, and I will find out actually from Mimi when we're done. I'm going to mark that down so I don't forget to ask Mimi. And let's see if all of that work on this piece has been done, and then we'll give it to you. And it's going to be pretty generous, and hopefully that will make a difference. We're working on it, and we'll have it for you very soon. And do I think it's worth the hassle? Well, honestly, there are none that are so blind as those that refuse to see. So, you know, everything is worth the hassle, but the choice that I've personally made is to make sure that I can feed the people that are hungry, that are going, oh, you're just insane, you're just crazy. That's part of the community, being part of the community. Hopefully your friends has some other skill sets that have value that you can bring into the community, but you better be prepared to take care of them. I mean, that's the choice that I've made, because if they won't see it, they won't see it. And it doesn't mean, as a human being on this planet, I feel like we have a big obligation to help everybody that we can, whether they agree with us, whether they don't agree with us. I don't think anybody deserves to go to bed hungry at night. You know, I don't think anybody deserves to lose, well, maybe some people deserve to lose their freedoms for sure. But, you know, I feel like we have to come together in our community to help the people that cannot see this, because they're not going to be immune. They're going to feel it worse. And what are you going to do? Are you going to turn away, you know, a family or friend that's hungry at your door when you know you have food? You're not going to do that. You're here. I know you're a nice person. You're not going to do that. So I think, you know, in this case, we are working on developing. We've got a number of things in the works for education, because that's really the piece. And this little thing that we're putting together for you could create some really nice shifts. Stay tuned. We should have that for you shortly. And James Burnett asks, Are gold and silver backs and notes considered collectible? If you're talking about the gold back, this would be classified as a collectible. So yes, I don't know that they're doing silver backs, but the gold backs, yeah, they would be considered a collectible. Absolutely. And it's because of the premium. It's also why jewelry is considered more of a collectible, because it's a huge premium. And that premium is way higher than the premium on the collectible coins, by the way. And Promer asks, hey, Lynette, greetings from Austria. I'm actually Austrian. Part of me is anyway. And I've been there. I love Austria. It's gorgeous. Thank you so much for everything you do. You are very welcome, and thank you for being here. Do you know anyone in Europe who shares your mantra and is active in public, like on YouTube or social media? My full mantra, probably no, but we are working on networking so that we can bring the strategy there and we can bring the full mantra there. But we're happy to help you with the mantra pieces as best as we can. And I do know a farmer in Italy that I could call or connect you with. He's in Tuscany, and I love him. I've known him since 2009. That's when I first met him. But no, I wish I did, and we're working on that. And low blood pressure asks, Lynette, what's hoochie coo? Well, that's my age showing, because I didn't make that up, but rock and roll, it just kind of means, get it done. Rock and roll, hoochie coo, come on mama, whatever that song is. I don't even remember what the song is. I think the person that wrote it recently passed, didn't he? But hoochie coo, it's kind of like rock and roll hoochie coo means get it done. Just go ahead and get it done. That's my age showing. I think that song came out in the 70s, probably. I think he's looking. Hi, Tiger Stacker. Lynette, where do you categorize 20 francs and sovereigns compared with the raw pre-33 versus slabbed collectibles pre-33? The francs and the sovereigns, I have a rooster here, so that's in that same category, is in my barterable gold. Must be minted prior to 1948. Especially with the Swiss francs, but that's in the barterable part of the portfolio along with the raw pre-33s. When you get to the slabbed pre-33s, then that's different. Then that's more for paying off a mortgage, but more lower quality level, higher mintage. So there are different categories depending upon what you want to do with it. But the slabbed coins come in above the level of barterability. They don't go into the level of barterability. I mean, maybe a 60 could, but I don't know that it's really worth it, honestly. So I just kind of go with the raw in that case. But anything that's not slabbed and is just raw and it's about the weight, that goes into that first line of defense barterable category. The pre-33s that are slabbed, those go into either paying off a mortgage or being in a position for to take advantage of the opportunity, so opportunity positioning and also legacy building. And Gina Young asks, hi Zang Gang, hi Lynette. This question has to do with gold backs and the tariff that happened and then didn't. Goldback Inc. gets their gold from LBMA. Does that mean the price of them will go up? Probably so, because like in this happens to be a $1 gold back and it's got 1/1000th of an ounce of gold embedded in it. So yeah, the cost to the people that make the gold backs would definitely go up were the tariff to stay in place, or as the spot price rises, that's also going to push them up. And I know that they publish them every day, and I've got a meeting tomorrow, so I'm gonna just give myself a note so I don't forget to see, because I can see a place for them in the beginning, like in the cash part of the strategy, makes a lot of sense to have some gold backs. And Derek Cork, all right, Derek, are you from Canada? Just out of curiosity. Okay, Derek Corkin asks, hi, I'm a new stacker and have only been buying gold and silver eagles and nothing else. Is this smart? You know, Derek, I'm going to suggest that you call us. It depends on what it is that you are trying to do. It always depends. And that's why I can't give you a blanket answer. I personally do not stack gold eagles other than this one. And then you guys have seen my travel bracelet, which I'm not wearing at this moment, but that has some eagles in it as well. And I don't personally accumulate them or stack them because I believe that there is likely to be, or at least a high probability of an overt confiscation of gold. Because in this country, gold has been confiscated 3 times in the past. The last time was 33. It was also the War of 1812 and also the Civil War. So therefore, for me, that is clear historic presence for an overt confiscation. This has been exempt from confiscation. So this is more where my level of comfort is. And plus, with my Uncle Al, he was holding legally the kind of gold that he could use in the normal marketplace. That's critical because I have a lot of people that say to me, well, I just won't turn it in. I mean, it's physical. If you hold it, you own it. It's invisible. I'm pretty sure they're not going to come banging on your door, give me your gold, because in this country, most Americans do not hold gold other than maybe a wedding band or jewelry, things like that. But my uncle had at least 3,000 ounces of the pre-33 coins in 1964. In 1964, it was illegal to hold more than 5 ounces any other way than the way that he was doing it. That made a big impression on me. So say what you will, have all the hopium that you want, but I believe that history is a guide to what is the next most likely outcome. And that's what we base the whole strategy on. Just the things that have happened 100% of the time. Because even though I can't guarantee that that's what's going to happen this next time, if it's happened over 4,800 times and we're doing the same thing, chances are pretty good that we're going to more than likely get the same result. So that's why I personally do not buy bullion, gold bullion. I will with silver, but not with gold, because I believe there will be an overt confiscation. Desperate governments do desperate things, and like we just saw, what was going to be tariffed? Monetary gold, not collectibles. Well, what was confiscated? Monetary gold, not collectibles. So as long as you buy it below its true value, going back to before, what if it loses all of its collectible value? That's not likely to happen, but what if it does? If you haven't even come close to the fundamental value, and that keeps going up as they keep taking on more debt, then it doesn't matter. You're okay either way. And that's the way I like to play. What if I'm right? What if I'm wrong? If I can do something that doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong, that is always going to be the choice that I make, even if it costs me a little bit more money, because that's my wealth insurance, so I don't care. And I know how much it's really worth, so I don't care. But everybody's got to do what they're comfortable doing. But give us a call, Derek, and let us have that conversation and walk you through everything. And then whatever it is that you choose to do, we will support you 100%, even if you disagree with us. That this is a community. Not everybody has to be on exactly the same page, but we do have to support each other. And Neo the Wise asks, can one get a jeweler to make a bracelet out of their bullion eagles to avoid confiscation or travel internationally? The answer is yes. And they have these bezels, right? So they have all these different sizes for all the different sizes of coins. And so the answer is absolutely. You can have a jeweler put the American Eagles inside of that bezel, and now you can try. I do it all the time, and I wear it, on air, but that's my travel jewelry, is that coin, and it's got, I think, 3 or maybe 4 eagles. I've also had bracelets made out of roosters. I think I chose roosters for that. And I got a lot more in there. So the answer is yes, you can absolutely do it, and it makes all the sense in the world. And Eldon Elder says, do all central banks forget about the political differences of their respective countries and collude to set the price of gold using the US dollar as the unit of value? That is definitely a possibility, Eldon, because just go back to what happened after 2008. And what you saw was all of the central banks discussing. I mean, they all meet at the IMF, right? Who's in the IMF? There are 196 countries in this world, and 189 of them are members of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. And that includes every Treasury Secretary and every central bank chief. So they meet all the time. And regardless of their differences, when you are in a global hyperinflationary state, they will work together to reset everything. Yeah, better be in gold when that happens. Yes, I can see that. Now, whether they use it as the US dollar or it's revalued in each of the individual currencies at the same rate and level, that's probably more accurate than saying everybody's now going to do it to the US dollar. But the US dollar would likely lead if it still holds the title of world reserve currency. And for those that aren't familiar with what that actually means, as the world reserve currency, if you were going outside of your borders to buy anything, whether you're a government or a corporation, and certainly individuals know this when they travel, but if you were a government or corporation and you were going outside of your borders to buy lumber or oil or steel or whatever it is, you had no other option but to use US dollars to make those purchases. And that was the artificial market that Henry Kissinger created back in the 70s, and why the US dollar managed to retain its status as the world reserve currency. So, but I would imagine that this happens, and that's go on to the xe.com and just play around with it a little bit and put in dollars and gold and silver for any currency that you choose, any currency at all, and you're going to see the difference in there. But no, I think that it won't necessarily. The U.S. might be the guide, but it kind of depends on when this happens, because the hyperinflation could very well be as a result, or the loss of status as the world reserve currency could actually be as a result of de-dollarization, which has really been in the works since 2000. That's why the euro was created. Well, it didn't really work, but that's why the BRICS were created. It hasn't really worked yet. But the whole system has to reset because everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's in the same boat. And there is no value left in anybody's currency. And so it has to hyperinflate away. It has to. Whether they do it all against the dollar, I think it's more likely kind of local. We'll have it general, but we'll have it local. And we'll see, Eldon. It's going to be interesting. We could not live in more interesting times, in my opinion. And Sandy Anderson, haven't seen you in a while. You may have been here. You just didn't ask a question. I bought a lot of gold and silver in 2020 before I found you, Lynette. All bullion. I live in Denmark. What is your advice? I have not looked to see the history of Denmark and their gold confiscation. this is something that I am working on, because frankly, every single country had gold and silver as their money at one time. And I'm not really sure. Oh, okay. Well, let's see. Boy, you are really handy with this stuff. Okay. In 2016, Denmark passed a law requiring newly arrived asylum seekers to hand over valuables, including gold, jewelry, and cash exceeding a certain threshold, 10,000 kroner, equivalent to about $1,450, to help cover the costs of their stay. This measure was part of a broader set of policies aimed at deterring immigration and was met with international criticism. While the law was amended to exempt items with sentimental value, like wedding rings, other valuables, including watches, mobile phones, and computers, could be confiscated. That's according to CNN. I really would suggest that you, and we're working on this too. We've got a lot of stuff in the works, because like I said, I mean, I have this book in here that I've had for like a million years, and it shows a whole bunch of foreign gold coins, right? So we know that all countries at one time had gold and silver as their actual money. Where did all of that go? There has to be a collectible market, and I'm committed to finding it. And I very well may have some help here coming very quickly. So we are working on that as well, because that is a big concern. And people think, oh, that can't happen. In the face of, well, it just happened in 2016. And in India, it happened as well. And actually in India, they did go door to door. And people want to tell me that didn't happen, but it came from the Department of the Treasury. And so I kind of think if they said it, it probably did happen. I wasn't there. But yeah. You want to be as private as you possibly can. And Twisted Player 73 asks, are dollars just a derivative of gold? Yes, Twisted Player 73. That is exactly what they are. They're supposed to mimic gold, just like the cryptocurrencies. You guys that are all high on the cryptocurrencies, why are they gold? Why are most of them gold, silver, or platinum? Because they want you to think that this is as good as gold. It's not. But great. Yes, dollars, euros, yen, any fiat money, they are just a derivative. They were designed to mimic oh my gosh, my brain just went blank. They were designed to mimic the monetary traits of gold, except that they have inflation baked into the system. And the design was about enabling governments to tax you without having to go through legislation. And that's the almost invisible inflation tax, because they get to use the money before you do. So that's that tax. And for corporations, they wanted to pay you less. And so inflation helps both of those entities do it. And they work together quite well, until they don't. And that's the battle. So yes, good question. Thank you. And Terrafin asks, great show. Oh, thank you. In the UK, they push gold Britannias and sovereigns and poo-poo the old coins. What is your opinion? P.S. I enjoyed the short on your yard with the plant I cannot pronounce. Not sure which plant that is, but good. I'm glad. I'm trying to integrate more of this in there. But you know, my opinion is that the Bank of England doesn't really have very much gold, right? I'd be going with the collectibles, absolutely. Every opportunity, you want to go with what are the wealthy in Britain buying for themselves, okay? You look at the King of England, right? I mean, he's got all those legs of the wealth stool, doesn't he? Real estate, truly rare collectibles. He's got a lot of gold in there, doesn't he? And also gold itself, basic gold. So it's layers. The Dynastic Wealth Stool is built in layers, and so is the Zang Sound Money Strategy, built in layers. And I've got old sobs, right? Go with the old stuff. And Tony T asks, what do you collect alongside coins as an investment, if anything? You know, this has not always been true, and I don't expect it to always be true. But because we are in a reset transition, I am just in safety right now. I mean, you see the antiques that I have, and they definitely do hold their value. They are definitely rare collectibles. And by the way, over the course of my lifetime, there have been absolutely times when, especially after I first got divorced and I was raising 2 babies by myself and trying to figure it all out and getting everything into gear, there were times when I sold my collectibles to feed us and keep the roof over our heads. And, you know, you do what you got to do. And I'll tell you, I was so grateful that I had that because, frankly, most of the time, you know, maybe I lost a little money on it. Maybe I made a little money on it. Maybe I broke even. But because they were good, there was always a market. There is no market for junk. And that's what this stuff is. This stuff is junk. And it's losing market share. So I don't really, I mean, I stick with my, at this point anyway, I really do stick with my Dynastic Wealth Stool. But it's not so much as far as like an investment. It's more for me of leaving a legacy because I have plenty for the rest of my life. No matter what happens, I feel like I'm going to be fine. But I look at my grandchildren, I look at your grandchildren, and I see what they have. I mean, think about this. AI, as Josh pointed out, and China, you know, or China's using AI as a tool for mass propaganda. And you think the U.S. isn't doing that too, or other countries aren't doing it? So you have the monetary system that's just disgusting and designed. It has set up winners and losers, and the public is the loser, and the 1% are the winners. Well, we have to make this a fair playing field for the future, or we end up back in feudal times where you have a handful of people that own everything and you rent everything. And have we not gotten used to, are we not getting used to this subscription model, right? But with these smart contracts on top of everything and your ability to hold your wealth on your cell phone wherever you are, and the AI tools knowing how to nudge you in the direction they want you to go in, and the loss of critical thinking because people are depending upon AI, where we just showed you how they came up with something, AI came up with something that I didn't even say. Yeah, that bothered me a lot. That's why I asked him to share it today, because we have to do our own due diligence. It's like somebody will come to me and say, oh, such and such happened. And my first response is, well, did you check it out and make sure that what you're hearing is accurate? Oh, no. We can't take anybody's word for anything. You shouldn't even take my word for anything. That's why on all of my work, I give you the links. Hold my toes to the fire. And you guys do a good job of that. And I appreciate that a lot. I don't have any problem with that at all. But you should be holding everybody's toes to the fire. Let them prove what they are saying is true. Don't take anybody's word for anything. So I don't really collect anything else. I collect food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. At this point, that's really what I do collect. And Dr. Zarkov says, what about maple leafs or Krugerrands? If when revaluation happens, can the U.S. government take those bullion coins too? You can hold those in an IRA, can't you? So, yeah. Actually, I'm not sure if you can hold the Krugerrand in there, but I'm guessing that you can. Krugerrand was very, very popular when we first were allowed to buy gold again. But is it? Oh, look at this. He's just going in there to check that out. I love that. Based on the information available, you cannot include, that's what I thought, the South African Krugerrand gold coins in your IRA. So, yeah. Yeah, the IRS's minimum purity level, I mean, it's a joke. They pick and choose, but yeah, I didn't think you could hold Krugerrands in an IRA, so there you go. Then you can buy Krugerrands if that's where your level of comfort is, absolutely. Okay, and Colleen Allen asks, how does one clean up a gold tooth that has all the dental debris on it? Well, you know, I got one of those after my mom passed, and I don't know whether it was hers or it was my father's. I just keep it in this little pouch, and I don't try and clean it up because it's kind of gross to me. But you could certainly take it, what they would do, you could take it in, and what they would most likely do is melt the gold down so that it would kind of flow off the tooth and then filter it. But I have never done that, and nor have I thought to do it. I have it because I got it when my mom passed. And it is gold, but I imagine I don't know how to answer your question, Colleen, because I'm not going to do it. But sorry. And Charles Chapman asks, do you think that the Fed should be ended? Yes, I do. Even with Trump's Treasury then setting loose monetary policy. Well, I think that we need to go on a gold standard, and then we don't need the Federal Reserve, or we don't need any central bank. So yes, I do think that the Fed should be ended. I agree with Ron Paul 100%. That was his battle since the 70s, and he never gave up on that battle, and today he hasn't given up on that battle. But I also know that during Nixon's reign, the central bank head of Burns did exactly what Nixon wanted him to do, and that just exacerbated and made everything worse. So I know that they'd like to end the Fed, but I think that if he gets in enough people that are amenable to what he wants, he doesn't need to make that an issue, ending the Fed an issue. But once we go on the gold standard, then we don't need the Fed. So yeah, I do think it should be ended. Absolutely. So, okie dokie. That is it for today. This was really a fun session. And you guys have absolutely, I hope you know how energized I am after these sessions. No matter what I might feel like going into them, just spending this afternoon with you is really and truly one of my most favorite things that I do, and extremely important to me, extremely important. So I want to thank all of you for being here and being part of this community. And until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.